Hi there, Steve Kaufman here. Today I want to talk about a subject that comes up all the time. It's motivation. I think motivation is the number one most important element, factor in language learning success. I just finished participating in a Google Plus Hangout with, I don't know, 7 or 8 other polyglots, people who on the internet regularly post comments like I do, talking about their experience of language learning. And it was hosted by David Mansoret, who lives in London. And I'm going to leave a link to it here in the box underneath the video. And if you are interested, please go and listen. It was done using the Google Plus Hangout technology. We're still kind of ironing out the best practices for this technology. Things like leaving your microphone on mute when you're not speaking. But here were 7 or 8, 9 people who are obviously very motivated to learn languages. And we were asked several questions by David about the different methods that we use and what we found useful and not useful and so forth. One thing that was interesting was that most of the people answered that there was one question: what techniques that other people use do you not find useful, or something to that effect. And a number of people said that they don't find it useful to do shadowing. They don't find Anki or spaced repetition or flashcards useful. So that, and yet there are people who find those things useful. And I think what I took out of that was that if you are motivated, you will find the learning techniques that work best for you. And it really doesn't matter whether you flashcard or use Anki or use something else. Most of the people there basically said they like to listen and read. They like to engage with things that were meaningful and interesting to them. And I think that's a very important part of motivation. I think that in many cases the traditional method of teaching is quite demotivating because it focuses on the nuts and bolts of the language, trying to get you to pronounce correctly at an early stage, or trying to get you to remember grammatical patterns at an early stage. And because this is extremely difficult to do, people get frustrated. But yet I still, leaving that aside, I still ask myself, for example, I've mentioned before that immigrants to Canada do very poorly at these government-sponsored language schools. I would think they basically achieve, nothing that they couldn't achieve more effectively on their own if they were motivated. I would think for a motivated person, the time spent in the classroom is actually a waste of time, because you're in there listening to 10, 15, 20 other people struggle with the language. Whereas if you were genuinely motivated, you could learn using resources on the internet. If you're living in a place where the language is spoken, you're just surrounded by resources that can help you learn. But so few people are motivated. And so I asked myself, here we have these 9 keeners, and then subsequent to that I had a discussion in Chinese with Nicholas from Sweden, who's 18 years old and who speaks flawless English, Spanish, and now has been at Chinese, he says, for 4 months, and he speaks like, wow, extremely well. Again, a very motivated person. So why is it that some people are so motivated and other people sort of say, yeah, like I spoke to a lady the other day at a Chinese restaurant. We were speaking in Chinese, and she said, yeah, I've been here 3 years, and I really want to learn, but I'm having a lot of trouble and stuff, and she can hardly speak English. And if you were really motivated, I didn't want to probe, but like, how much time do you actually spend with English? How much effort do you put into it? So that I think there's various levels of motivation. There are those people who aren't interested at all, and I knew a lot of those when I lived in Japan, for example. Europeans, North Americans who lived there and made absolutely no effort to get beyond the konnichiwa in Japanese. So there's the zero motivation group. Then there's the people who say, yeah, I would love to be able to speak Spanish. But they don't, they're sort of at a certain level, they're motivated, but they either aren't sufficiently motivated to push, or they become easily discouraged. And this was another point that was raised by Luca, that the initial period with a language can be quite discouraging because it's so difficult. You can't make sense of the language, nothing you don't understand and stuff. And so it is important to persevere. and break through that to the next level. Now, in my own experience, I find that the initial period in some ways is quite rewarding, because very quickly you know the word for dog, horse, cow. You know some things, whereas previously you knew nothing. But then comes that very long period where you have to move from some understanding of the language to actually reaching a comfortable level of fluency. So I think that intermediate to advanced stage takes a much longer period of time than getting from zero to some understanding in the language. And I think there too people lose their motivation. And there again, my advice always is to give yourself credit for more than you think, for being better than you think you are, but also stay with activities that are interesting and follow your interests. Now, that's assuming that people have interests. If you have no interest in any aspect, then probably you're not going to be so motivated. But I just felt, coming off that discussion with those polyglots, and also with Nicholas, I said there's this small group of people, maybe those are the people who watch my videos, people who are into learning more than one language. That's a very small number. And then there's a very large number of people who, to varying degrees, would like to learn a language, but they aren't motivated enough. Now, why is that? Is it that we have to make it easier for them to achieve some success, that they could feed off that success to become more motivated? That's the thing I always struggle with. How do you, motivate people, assuming that there's some degree of interest in speaking another language? Is it a matter of convincing them that they'll be so much happier if they speak that other language? In other words, making the reward more palpable to them. I think of, again, I was talking to someone in Europe, and there unemployed people receive 600 euros a month, but if they attend a language school, they get 800 euros a month. So they are motivated to attend the language school. But this person told me most people don't learn very much there. So the motivation drives them to attend the language school 6 hours a day with 20 people in the classroom. So if they do that for a year, that's 1,200 euros. 200 additional. What did I say? 2,400 euros. Maybe you could motivate them by saying, if you achieve level X in the language, we will give you 2,400 euros. Rather than motivating them to go to school, when in fact the schools are very often quite unsuccessful at teaching the language, maybe the motivation should be, if you achieve level X, we will give you 2,400 euros. Now, you still have to find people willing to come up with the money to motivate people, but even if you don't get the money, the rewards for being comfortable in the language, to me, are so obvious in terms of professional opportunities, in terms of cultural enrichment, in terms of being able to make friends and travel in different countries, that it's like getting a bonus of 2,500 euros or 5,000 euros. It's worth more than 5,000 euros. I guess the question is, how do you initially make that achievement of being comfortable in another language seem genuinely attractive to people, so that they're just committed to it? And then how do you maintain their motivation? By making sure that they do activities that are interesting to them. And then how do you ensure that they achieve some degree of success, so that will in turn encourage them to continue? And I guess part of that is to not allow them to be discouraged, allow them to recognize that it takes a long time to learn a language. So, these are some of the things that I often wonder about. Potentially, I think, if there's a very small percentage of people who are very motivated to learn languages, how do we make that 10 times the number? So I'd be interested in hearing your comments about this whole issue of motivation and how to motivate people beyond the sort of, I call ourselves the little ghetto of polyglots, but into the sort of average population. How do you get more people interested in learning languages and get them to stay with the program until they achieve success? So I look forward to hearing any comments. Thank you for listening.